Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of FitChat. I'm your host, Jenny, and with me, I have a very special guest today. This is Stephanie Brunson with me. She is our ergonomic consultant. Thank you for joining us, Stephanie. We're excited to have you. Welcome to the FitChat family.
Thanks.
um, so first of all, let's just start with a little introduction about you. So if you tell us just a little bit about your background, who you are, where you came from, tell us your life story.
Okay, awesome. So my name is Stephanie, and I'm the ergonomic consultant for HPE team members, and I work virtually, so I'm able to work with anyone within that U.S. population. Um, and I currently am really focused on our office workers, so people who are sitting at our desk in our cubicles. And yeah, so I actually am from Houston originally. So when I speak to our Houston members, I always love to hear how it's going there, how hot it is.
Oh, very
Um,
hot.
how humid is it today? Yes, all
Very
of those
humid.
things. I'm sure it's not even, I mean, it's not even fully summer yet, and yeah, you're
It's
probably
bad.
maxed out. So yes, I get to talk with all the population. And I'm from Houston, and that's where I went to school, University of Houston, Clear Lake. And I actually originally started my educational career wanting to go into physical therapy, and found my way in corporate wellness, and actually really enjoyed it. And but I still was kind of missing that element of helping people a little bit more directly one-on-one with
Right.
some of the things that they were dealing with. So I was able to find my way into injury prevention and treatment. And so I started working at a manufacturing and distribution site. So they were manufacturing screws and bolts for hip replacements. So working with individuals who were doing lots of standing work in clean rooms, and also lots of little fine motor movements. So we were doing lots of hand strengthening and stretching exercises, neck as well, because they're kind of doing this all day long. And then distribution, it was like a big warehouse, like an Amazon warehouse. So it was really kind of fun to see just how organized everything was, and people just on their feet all day, running back and forth, reaching, lifting, pushing, pulling, all of those activities. So working really with what we consider to be our workforce athletes. And so that was really fun. And then eventually finding my way into this role with office workers specifically. And I've been here in this role now. This will be my second year this summer.
Awesome. Sounds like a blast.
Yeah,
You're
it
doing
is.
such a great job too, so we love having you. So any hobbies outside of work?
Yes, I love to travel. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and we really like to be outside, camping, skiing, hiking. We actually just went camping this weekend, and hiking. And my husband, he takes like what we like, and he does a little extreme. And so he found the last little bit of snow and brought his skis and skied down it to say goodbye to
Nice.
winter, I guess. But so yeah, we like to be outside, and we like to kind of be adventurous.
Love that. Awesome. Cool. Well, Stephanie is amazing at what she does. She does an awesome job helping our employees just set up their offices and giving recommendations for the best work materials. I know when I first got started, you helped recommend desks to me and chairs and all of the fun things. So that was super helpful. Um, so I know we've been seeing a lot of employees start to go back to work. Maybe it's a few days of the week, and they're still working from home a few days of the week. So that means they have two office setups. So what we're going to kind of chat about today is just the idea of mobile workforce ergonomics. So, kind of walk me through um, what that is exactly.
Yeah, so, as I was speaking with our EHS, our Employee Health and Safety Department, we were preparing for kind of this transition of employees working their way back into the site after being home for so long and making sure that their home setups were correct. And also knowing that the sites now are these transformed sites, which have lots of different workstations that employees can grab for different reasons. So if they're meeting with employees or if they're trying to do collaborative work, creative work. So we wanted to really focus on educating the employees to make sure that they had just first that mental checklist in any environment that they were in. So even if they were traveling and finding themselves in a coffee shop, they knew exactly what they needed to set themselves up to work for long periods of time. um, and so that's kind of what this mobile workforce looks like, is taking that education component, making sure that you have that, and then bringing it with you regardless of your environment, or where you find yourself working. And really, the mobile workforce does encourage more movement through the day, which is
Okay.
what we want to be doing in general. We don't want to be finding
Right.
that we're in any sort of um, stagnant position for longer than really, especially a seated position for longer than 20 minutes.
Mm, that's wild. I'll sit
Yes.
at my desk seated for hours and hours and hours and then be like, I should probably get up.
Yes.
Probably get up and fill my water.
So if you are working and sitting there working, typically, some people it's a little bit more, some people it's a little bit less, but typically cognitively, our brains kind of start to time out at about 45 minutes, which is why most people say to me, "Oh, I take a break every hour," because they can sit there physically for a pretty long period of time, but usually at about an hour, our brains are like, "Oh my gosh, this is just a jumbled mess. I need to get up and move." So we want to think about if we're going to sit and do something to try and increase or decrease that amount of time. So maybe you're typing something up or typing your emails, and then you stand up and proofread them, then take your break.
Okay. That's
So
kind of a
just
good strategy.
yeah, thinking about our time in a different way than we normally maybe would.
Okay. Love it. Yeah, I have a sit and stand desk at home, and so that kind of helps me to stand up throughout the day. Um, so how do you manage, remembering to stand up and get moving? Do you like have a timer, or do you just, like you said, you write an email and then proofread it and stand up? Is that how you kind of judge it, or do you have more of a structured time timing thing that's going on and you're like, oh, time to stand?
Well, thankfully, I have to talk about this all day long, so it's a top that's
Helps.
fresh on my head. It does, it helps. I'm constantly thinking about how can I make, this a habit that's a real part of my life. And so I've just drove a few different techniques, and I think everyone kind of has to do a little science experiment with themselves and find out what
Right.
works
Find
for
what
them.
works. Yeah.
Mm. I know that at one of the sites that I used to work at, we had a walking desk, and I loved to kind of go get on that for a little bit. But I knew there were only certain tasks that I could do at that walking desk, and so I could be on a meeting listening. I could be doing a few emails, but I could not do anything on an Excel spreadsheet because that was just too much for my brain to walk and do Excel at the same time. So when you look at your day, kind of just playing around with where does this fit into my day best? What can I stand and do easily without losing my focus? One of the techniques that I like to use is to start the day standing. So before you leave your desk, or if you're at home, you just lift your desk up to the setting that you stand at and leave it there. So when you come in, you are not thinking about, oh, I need to
Yeah.
start standing. So you just start the day standing. And then as you fatigue, it is totally fine and acceptable to sit. We want to have both options.
Right.
If we were standing all day too, that would be not great for us as well. We would
Right.
feel fatigue.
I think a
Um,
big thing is just listening to your body, right? Just, if you're standing and you're feeling a little, stiff or whatever, okay, maybe I should sit down. Or if you're sitting and you're starting to get a little stiff, listen to your body, stand up a little bit. So I think that's a big part of it. Just
I
listening to your
think
body,
for
which we don't often do.
no, absolutely. And you're sitting in your chair and you're like, man, I feel uncomfortable. And so you kind of like wiggle. We were just chatting about
Yeah.
we
I
wiggle and
feel
we kind of
myself doing it right now. Like I'm like my back's hurting. So I'm like starting to go like this.
yes, exactly. Exactly. That might be the cue. Oh, I'm gonna stand up for a little bit, you know?
Mhm.
So that might be the cue for somebody. Another thing too, because I think that 20 minutes feels almost overwhelming. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be up and down all day long. But if you look at your day and blocks of, your meetings, like typically you have a 30-minute meeting or an hour meeting.
Right.
And I know that like during this meeting with you, Jenny, that I need to be standing up at one part of that meeting. So at the end of this meeting, I either need to get up and move around or um, you know, during this meeting, I need to get up and move around, which typically you're not going to stand up in the middle of work, right?
Right.
So I know that if I have an hour meeting, then I need to find some time to move during that meeting as well. So yeah, I think that's the break frequency cycle, and thankfully the mobile workforce gives us more opportunities to move throughout our day and interact with people.
So talk to me a little bit about the setup at home versus the setup at work, and then like how do we transfer everything from home to work and then back home and then to work, back and
Yeah,
forth.
yeah. So, if you have specific keyboards and mice that you use that you feel really confident with, or maybe you've gotten an evaluation with me and we've looked at something very specific as far as a tool for you, you want to make sure that you're using Bluetooth tools and that you're taking them in a backpack, if at all possible, a
Okay.
backpack or even a roller bag when you're coming back and forth to work. So that you're carrying that weight pretty evenly and safely. Um, and, I know we all have these laptops and they're great for mobile workforce, you know, working from an airplane and working from a coffee shop. But when we're going to be using our keyboard, we really want to think about using a keyboard that's external because that positions our hands in a little bit better way. So if we're using a really narrow keyboard, we're going to find that our hands come in really close to our body, and then our thumbs actually start to kind of curl in, and we start to feel on the outside edge near the pinky that the wrist starts to get a little closed off.
Wow.
And we want to avoid that, especially for prolonged periods of time. So using that external keyboard helps to position our hands in a little bit better setting there.
Because
Um,
they're longer, right? That's
Yeah.
okay.
Your
Okay.
keyboard's usually a little, that external keyboard, a Bluetooth keyboard, is usually a little bit wider. If you
Okay.
can even compare your keyboards when you're looking at them.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and then an external mouse, making sure that it fits your hand size appropriately. You're not using. I was using a travel mouse for a long period of time because I do have a smaller hand, but that was just still too small. I really shouldn't be using that travel mouse as a regular mouse. So, yeah.
Nice. Um, so you said backpack to carry things. Um, do you think there's a better would you gravitate more towards the rolly bags to put that pressure off your back? Or does it
So,
really matter?
I think it just kind of depends on if if you're at a smaller site and you're not walking very far to and from your car, um, using a backpack is probably fine. I know I had a roller bag and I had a backpack when I was at the on site in Colorado Springs. And during the summer, I didn't really want to, or during the winter, I didn't want to use my roller bag because the ground was just dirty with, snow and gross stuff.
Right. Okay.
So, but it also wasn't very far from my car to my desk. So I used
Right.
a backpack. But yeah,
Okay.
I used to think that, oh, I mean, this is when I was younger and didn't have the typical aches and pangs that we get as we age. But I was like, oh, those roller bags, that's for weak people. But now I realize that, I'm going to use my muscles for the things I enjoy doing, like being outside. And I
Right.
don't overwork or overstrain my muscles if I don't have to. So, using those is totally fine and acceptable.
Gotcha. One question specifically for me because I've been having this issue and I'm curious to know what you think. So the headphones we have, the ones that you're wearing, the Bluetooth, I take that home and hear constantly. Um, and I have a backpack, but what's the best way to pack those? Because there's a bunch of pieces that go into it. What's the best way to pack it in my backpack without
Yeah.
ruining it or messing it up?
I actually have a separate bag for mine too because I love my headset so much, and I think
Yes.
mine specifically I think is a little bit older, and I don't think they have this version anymore. And so if something happens to it, I'm gonna have to do the upgrade, and I don't want the upgrade. I really like the one that I have. Um, so I use just a separate bag, and I make sure that everything's kind of secure. I do the same thing though with my mouse. My mouse has a little bag that it has separately so that
Okay.
it stays secure, and it uses the little USB port to connect. Um, it's not it's Bluetooth, but it uses that little USB. So I just plug the USB in to my laptop to use it. And usually, if I'm traveling, I just take that USB out and I put it with the bag so that it's all together and ready to go. Um, and there are some, ergonomic specific keyboards for mobile work that
Mhm.
fold in half.
Oh,
So
I
they
think I've
they
seen those. Yeah.
mm, yeah. So those are, even easier to bring back and forth to your workspace and your workstation.
Oh,
Another thing to think about and consider when you are moving from seated to standing work is the location of your monitors. So there is usually a little bit of adjustability within the monitor to go up or down slightly. And you want to kind of think about what position you're in the most throughout the day and making sure that that monitor is adjusted correctly so that your neck, your head specifically, isn't leaning
right.
too far forward or you're not flexing in the neck, dropping your chin parallel. You want to make sure that you're fully supporting the weight of your head with your shoulders.
Gotcha. What do you think is, I'm curious, the most common question you get asked as a ergonomic consultant?
I don't know. I feel like that's that's a hard one, and I don't know, Jenny. That's a really challenging question,
Well,
and I feel
I
like it's in trends too. Like sometimes I'll see
okay.
quite a bit more geared towards this or that. For a while, it was like, should I have a sit to stand desk?
Okay.
Uh,
Which
yeah,
you would recommend, yes.
yeah. Actually, yeah. Um, my husband, he got a new office and it has a sit to stand desk. And I was just talking to him and I told him I was going to print off my graphic and set it on his desk so that he would start utilizing the standing function because it's just not something that he would even think about doing. And so, I think when we consider the amount of pressure on our lumbar spine when we're seated and how often we're sitting in our day, I think that's one of the things in my mind specifically that I like to speak to when I am talking about sit to stand work. You
Yeah.
know, we can actually reduce the amount of pressure on our spine by standing. So people who are feeling or starting to feel those hints of back pain or discomfort, standing can be a really great way to start strengthening some of those muscles and relieving that discomfort. Another thing too that I noticed while we were working from home is that, typically when we're at home, we're not wearing shoes. And so when employees were starting to try and stand for long periods of time, their feet just weren't conditioned to that.
Right.
And so they were trying to get, they were wanting to get like those, what are they called? The compression pads to stand on. And those are great if you're like doing dishes or in the kitchen,
Right.
but they actually get in the way of your chair when you're ready to sit back down. So having just the supportive shoes and wearing supportive shoes can go a long way in helping to strengthen both physically and mentally the habit of standing.
I would think one of the most popular questions you get would be about the chairs because those things have so many things you can move and change. And I'm like, what's the best way to put this? And I get so overwhelmed with the chairs. So
You
that
know,
would be my one thing.
oh, I'm so glad you brought up the chairs too, because that is actually one thing that I have seen as I've seen people transition back to sight is that they're in a brand new chair. They don't know really how to set it up for them. The person before them was sitting in it and set it up maybe for their height. Maybe they were six
Yeah.
something and the next person's 5'2". So, making sure that you think about the adjustments on your chair, what's available. And a lot of people get hung up on the armrest. Uh,
Yes.
and really, we don't need to have armrest to support us in our chair. Sometimes the armrests do more harm than good. They can get in the way of us sitting close to our desk.
Hmm.
Um, and sometimes they can be way far out and away from the body. So, if you can feel it in your own self if you want to try it, but take your elbows, pull them close to your ribs, and then lift them and extend them out. And even if you're resting them on something, you're going to start to feel activation,
Yeah.
upper traps. Just
Hmm.
holding those arms out to the side. Oh, we don't want to do that for a long period of time. So armrests are not important.
Okay.
If you do have armrests, then you want to make sure that they're adjustable.
Hmm.
And so up, down, and side and in are helpful adjustments for armrest. Or looking at the chair and seeing if you can take them off altogether. I've actually recommended that for people.
Wow. Okay.
I've, some armrests are they're not they're attached just underneath the seat, so they're not like a part of the back. And when that happens and they're getting in the way, I just say just unscrew the armrest.
That's such a
Um,
good point.
mhm. Yeah, especially if it's getting in the way of you sitting close to your workspace, and you really want to think that's another little ism that I like to say. When we're working at our desk, we want to belly up to the desk, kind of like you belly up to the bar.
Hmm.
Um, and so you want to scoot into your workspace. You don't ever feel like you're reaching far away to anything at your desk. You want to
Right.
sit as close as you can as possible. And then the lumbar adjustment on your chair, that's really for you to kind of play with and figure out where does it feel best to you. It's going to be a little different for everybody, but you don't want it at your hips, you want it above your hips. And a lot of times I see people just sit in a chair and they don't even think about it. And then all of a sudden they've been in that chair all day long and they're
Right.
feeling well.
So is that the little rod thing that goes up and down? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
hmm
And you
So the
just
one,
kind of feel it out, see what feels best.
yep, yep.
Okay.
So it's you want it to support that natural curve of your spine that's just above the hips. So when you're sitting back in your chair and you want to scoot your hips all the way back in the chair and then make that adjustment. Um, and when we're sitting, we do still want to be activating our core muscles. They shouldn't be just kind of willy-nilly taking a break. They need to still be supporting us. But that lumbar section of the chair helps to keep that natural curve of the spine in place.
I'm thinking about it, and I don't think I ever sit back on my chair. I
Yes.
really don't. I think I'm constantly up here.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe if I,
Insightful, Jen.
messed
Good.
with that
Yeah,
lumbar
and
support.
I do think that's a lot of the reason that people don't sit back in the chair is that it's not comfortable for some reason, and
Right.
so move to get comfortable. So,
Yeah.
keeping that image of sitting all the way back in the chair. And I think this is another thing too that a lot of people love when I tell them that the lazy boy position of their chair is one of the better positions for them. So actually having a chair that
Totally.
leans back
Uh,
is really a nice position for your spine during the day, as long as you're not using your hands. So, like on a call here with you, Jenny, leaning back is going to be really a great way to reduce pressure on my spine.
wow. I just thinking about it, I'm like, I'm always up at the tip top of my chair, never back. Wow. I need to work on this.
It's okay. It's just we learned little things along the way, and sometimes they click for us, sometimes they don't. And then we're like, why don't I feel really good? Why does my back hurt at the end of the day? And we
Right.
don't realize that half the day we're kind of in an uncomfortable position.
Right. Even the keyboard thing, I never thought that, using the keyboard on my laptop was completely different than using a standalone keyboard. That would never cross my mind. So,
Yep. Yep.
the things you
Not the
learn with
only one.
Stephanie.
Yes, you're not the only one. And there was a lot that I learned as I moved specifically into the office ergonomics. There's so
Right.
many cool, really cool toys out there to play with your workspace, and I think just making sure that you have some adjustability features in your tools can be one of the better things to think about when you're buying equipment for yourself.
What about, I just thought of this. I do not have multiple monitors, but for a person who has multiple on their desk, so you need to move with,
Mm,
like, towards the monitor, right? Like, you can't, because you wouldn't want to be like this, right?
that's right. That's right, Jenny. You
Okay.
don't want to be looking over your right or left shoulder. We want to use our eyes when we're looking at our different monitors. So the way that we think about multiple monitors is a few things. If you have both monitors that you're using equally for your day, then you actually want to position them so that the borders touch and that they are angled out. So kind of like a V shape, so
Okay.
that the middle or sorry, the right and left side of those monitors are touching each other and it's angled in a V shape. And you'll position yourself then centrally to those monitors, to both monitors. If that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah.
And then you'll put your keyboard and your mouse right there in between. So when you're looking at your right screen, you should only use your eyes. When you're looking at your left screen, you should only use your eyes. You
Would be
shouldn't,
so hard.
right? Well, if you get them close and you position them correctly, it should work that way.
Okay. Like, you shouldn't feel like you need to. Okay.
But if you
Hmm.
find that you are moving your head around, then maybe you need to reposition the monitors. So I think
Okay.
that's a great thing to think about. And you're right, Jenny. We don't want to be sitting. I think that's how we used to in the 80s. I feel like they used to have to position the giant monitors kind of off to the side, and you would see a lot of people typing and
Yeah. And
head
looking over there.
completely rotated.
Yeah.
Now, if you do have two monitors and you just use one primarily, then you can position that primary monitor in front of you and you can position the secondary monitor just off to the side. Um, but typically that's just glancing over, grabbing something from that screen and bringing it to your primary
Gotcha.
monitor.
Okay. Cool. Any other fun tips and tricks you want to share with our listeners?
I think having fun with it, I think, learning about your body and making sure that, whatever situation you find yourself in, like what you said, listening to your body. If you're feeling uncomfortable, kind of run through your mental checklist. Is my chair at the right height? Is my desk at the right height? Is my monitors, are they at the right height? Have I been sitting like this for a long period of time? Do I need to get up and move? Um, so I think just having that mental checklist Trying to make habits easy. Don't overthink standing throughout your day. Give yourself some grace as you're building habits of breaks and increasing break cycles. Yeah. So I think that's kind of my key takeaway that I like to leave people with is to give yourself time to work in new habits and make sure you're listening to your body.
Yeah, I think one big takeaway I'm gonna do is at the end of the day, the last thing I do, put my desk up to standing, and then the next morning I don't even have to think about it. That's so smart. And that's
Easy
a
peasy.
helpful way to just make it a habit, super
And
quick
if
and
you do
easy.
that at lunchtime too, then you're more than halfway there. You've got the habit done,
Wow,
in my
love it.
so
All right. Well, if that's everything for you, then we can finish this off with a rapid fire this or that round. And since we're talking about remote work, I thought maybe we'd talk home edition for this or that. So, are you ready?
I think so. We'll see. Nervous.
Okay. This or that, sleep in or get up early?
Get up early.
Same.
Yeah, yeah.
Mow the lawn or weed the garden?
I actually just mowed the lawn for the first time in a long time. Thankfully, our lawn is so short and it only takes 15 minutes.
That's nice.
But I would mow the lawn over weeding. I hate weeding the garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you sit back and you look at your lawn afterwards, you're like, man, so nice. Like a
That's my
drop.
husband. Every time he mows the lawn, he's like, see that? Look at that grass. Looks so good. I'm like, good job. You did so good. Like, but I guess it's because I've never mown the lawn, so like I wouldn't know what it feels like to.
Try it, Jenny. Try it.
Okay,
It's an
I
instant
will.
mood booster.
Love it. Take out the garbage or do the dishes.
Take out the garbage.
Mm, okay.
Yeah. I don't really do the dishes at home, and so I'll take the garbage out.
Yeah, easy peasy.
Yeah.
Game night or movie night?
Oh man, if I'm really like craving like some laughter, then I want a game night. But usually at the like we had a movie night last Friday. Normally Fridays I'm just done, and I fell asleep during movie night, and I was like, I'm gonna have to watch this one by myself. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a toss up. Depends.
Is it hard to pick the movie in your house?
No, we normally do like a series. Um
Oh,
So we'll pick a series that we're watching, and so like right now we're trying to get through The Mandalorian. So that way we don't have to spend any time trying to search for it.
arguing.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Very vivid discussions on what we're
Yes.
on food for. Um, and then all of a sudden the time is done and everyone's half asleep anyway. So we skip movie
Right.
night. So I like having a series and we just like, oh, we're gonna watch our show tonight and we watch the show. So
Love it. Okay, would you rather, I guess this is a more would you rather question, lose your air conditioning or lose your heat?
I would rather lose my heat. I feel like I'm pretty tolerant to both cold and hot, but it's so much easier to like put on a ton of layers and bundle up
Yes. Mm-hmm.
uh, than it is to like cool off when you're like
Right.
so
Exactly.
so
Agreed. Like, what would
yeah,
you do? Ice bath?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Easier to just put layers on.
Hmm.
All right, last one. This is a good one. This or that. Have a cockroach problem or a mice problem?
Okay, so in Houston, they're huge, right? They're like
They're
they're a
ginormous.
whole animal on its own. And so I know those roaches. And then in Colorado, where we've lived, we had mice because we lived really close to the woods, and it's just they like to be in the garage because it's warm. And so I think I would pick the roaches over the mice,
Yeah.
because when you're dealing with the mice, they're bigger and they have big eyes and all the things.
Yeah.
But I've never been like, if there were a lot of roaches, that would feel maybe a little that. So I don't know the exact answer to that right now, but I think if I had to pick something, it would be the roaches over the mice.
Yeah. I think it's easier to catch a roach than a mice.
And to
So,
kill a roach than a
yeah.
mice too.
Yeah.
Than a mouse too. Yeah. We used to have a
Mm.
cat, and she was very lazy, and she thought she was a good little mousing cat, and so she would catch it and bring it inside. She would like catch it in the garage and bring it
Mm.
inside for us, and then she'd be tired, and this half dead mouse we were chasing around the house. And I'm like, do your job, cat. Don't bring it inside.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, that's what I think about too. When you asked that question, I was like, I will take a roach over a half dead mouse that I'm trying to catch in my house.
That's hilarious. Well, there you have it. That's our episode of Fit Chat. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for joining us. We really appreciate your insight, and everything you shared today. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you next episode. Bye.
Bye.